Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this knowledge sharing session on redefining leadership development for next normal. I'm Pooja Bothra, Senior Content Lead, ETHR World, and your host for this session. Before I invite the panel in, I will take a minute or two to share the context. Present-day technologies such as AI, analytics, cloud computing, blockchain, robotics, and more, along with the pandemic, has resulted in an unprecedented level of change, which continues to present unique leadership challenges and opportunities to organizations today. To really tap into the strengths of the present-day environment and future-proof businesses, leaders must reset formulation and implementations of policies and processes at multiple fronts. Thus, as parameters of workplace success change, prioritizing leadership development will be critical to lead the workplace to the future. Today, we have gathered to discuss how trailblazing leaders of large companies are dealing with the nuances of leading hybrid workplace, keeping their learning and development at the center of all actions, and influencing and preparing the leaders of future. At this point, dear viewers, please join me in welcoming an absolutely power-packed panel. Kavita Singh, CHRO, United Breweries; Dr. C. J. Kumar, EVP and Head Corporate HR, Larsen and Toubro; Pankaj Lochan, Executive Director and Group CHRO, General Steel and Power; Raghav Gupta, MD, India and APAC, Coursera. Let us begin with a very open-ended question common to all the panelists here that will help us to really demystify the transformations taking place in your organization and industry at large. Kavita, I'd like to get you first for an opening statement. And the question is, what are some of the key developments you have witnessed in your business or industry that has reshaped work and led to digital acceleration?
Yeah, thank you, Pooja, and good evening to everyone. And, it's the last 2.5 years have been really very different from the way we've been working in the past few decades. So it's been like an accelerated change in the way we experience the workplace, both the contribution and the developmental side. And what I can say is, I have been with 2 organizations in the last 2.5 years, and I can say that across industries, whether it is manufacturing or FMCG, there is a huge shift in the way people are looking at contributing at work and what they take back as their learning opportunities. And the organizations have a huge opportunity to provide a lot of platforms, a lot of different ways in which people can be engaged. Now, and I think we'll definitely talk about it during the discussion. But I have seen that there is a very swift scale up in the way people have embraced technology. There is a huge requirement for people to change their skills to suit the current requirements at the workplace. And like you said in your opening remarks, a lot of sectors, including manufacturing, they have embraced technology and sped up the application of automation, artificial intelligence in their day-to-day work at a very high speed. So that has changed a lot in terms of what is needed from the colleagues at work as well. And I think organizations like ours, we are using that opportunity to speed up how we can connect with people, how we can make their work more easier, and how we can continue to create learning opportunities for colleagues while they are adapting to this new way of working. And I'm saying that still adapting because things are still evolving, and you see and read a lot about hybrid workplaces, but I think each organization has to find their own balance. So there is no one policy or one way that suits everybody. So that would be something that I would say in the opening remarks, Pooja.
Very interesting, Kavita. And, I'm sticking to your thought that there is a major shift in the way workforce is contributing at work. That is really the crux of today's time, and today innovation relies on that. Dr. Jayakumar, your statement.
Thank you, Pooja, and ETHR World for this opportunity. Good evening to everyone. Nice to be part of that such a elite panel. As you know, L&T is predominantly in EPC, manufacturing, and services. So let me handle this question in two parts. One is how did we handle the pandemic? Next is the landmark development happening in the industry. When the pandemic started itself, we had an order backlog of 2.5 lakh crores and 250 projects all running full. Suddenly, there was a spiral. There was a lockdown, 3 months of shutdown, and then subsequent multiple lockdowns, fear, apprehension, and still we are not out of that. How did we handle that? Thanks to the vision of our CEO and MD, Mr. S.N. Subramanian, we embarked on a digitalization journey a couple of years back. So quickly, suddenly we could be able to move from and working from site to an office from working from home option. Though we are into EPC, we cannot do much of the work from home. But when it came to the office-based work, we could quickly move to the office by having various ways, like we had the VPN connections. Most of the processes, including procurement, manufacturing, services, sales, finance, everything could be done from home because we had a full-fledged ERP system. We had Teams, Zoom, whatever way to connect with people, including data security, etc. Including HR, we had a world-class HRM platform. So the entire, whether it is payroll processing, none, including subcontractor payment, vendor payment, nothing got stopped because of this. In fact, we have been disrupting this EPC industry by digitalization, IoT, cloud, mobility, etc. Drones, various methods are being used. When it came to the project, we cannot work from home, but we have to move to the projects. We started working from project, but we ensured the motivation and morale of the staff and the workmen are kept very high. We went into all sort of precautions, health advisory, sanitation, quarantine centers, awareness campaign, you name whatever it is, we did everything to take care of that. Now I move to the second part of your question, that development in the industry during the pandemic. Quite natural that any developing economies spends considerable amount on infrastructure spending. In the recent budget also, if you would have seen that capital expenditure has increased by 35% to 7.5 lakh crores. So during the pandemic itself, during this period, a lot of jobs have been awarded. In fact, we bagged a whole lot of jobs, including a job which is equal to 3 billion USD, which is a very major project. So a whole lot of jobs were offered. We could bag as an industry leader. At the same time, our competition also bags a couple of jobs. So that brings in a lot of competition, right? There's a the trend still continues. To sum up, one side pandemic, we cannot work from home, we have to work from office. During the period also, there are jobs. The other agencies have also got jobs. So there is a scarcity of talent. So huge sum of investments, sizable order backlog, fierce competition, entry of different companies and multinationals inside. So digitalization, technology, quality of people or the resource or the talent will be the differentiator. That is the broad scenario in which we are there today, Pooja.
Very rightly said, Kumar, and I totally agree. Competition is speaking, and there are multiple players coming, and challenging your, if I don't say survival, but at least your development and your success with global organization, with startups, and the war for talent is real. So, whatever we do for the workforce is less today. Kavita, you've raised your hand. You want to make a point? Please go ahead. And then Pankaj, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment what CJK said. I just want to say that the pandemic has, kind of forced us to embrace technology in ways that are unprecedented. And one thing that really is good to see is the shift in the way we can manage the blue collar workforce and their learning requirements. So, this small instrument called the smart handphone, which was, a privilege earlier, is no longer a privilege, because we do most of the daily activities of bank transactions, purchasing, using multiple ways of transacting our daily activities through the phone, and hence learning becomes an integral part of that. And we have leveraged that a lot, in the way technology can help learning, and in various ways of reaching out to people, continuing to connect with them. And I'm not talking about WhatsApp, but I'm just saying that the other things that a manager needs to do, that a supervisor needs to do, that a daily contract workman or the supervisors on the floor need to do, technology and availability on the smartphone has really, really revolutionized the way people can approach work and learning.
Pankaj and viewers, I must tell you that Pankaj has also moved jobs at the peak of the pandemic. So he can, actually give us a perspective of two organizations, so as to say.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Very happy to be here on the panel. And thank you, ETHR World. So as you said, I moved from the cement industry to the steel, and both manufacturing, core manufacturing. So my experience was also kind of similar to what Kavita said. And so running, the operations in 3 shifts, continuous operations, was the biggest challenge. And I think in both of the companies, the common thing was, grappling with fear. Providing that quality of leadership, I think, was the most important thing. So to me, I think a lot has been said and very worthy points. To me, the 3 landmark things that happened during this pandemic was first that, the digitalization is no longer a fad. We want to move to a smart factory because it has benefits. And those benefits were earlier kind of construed as a progressive thing, but now it's more of a kind of a necessity than kind of a luxury. So that's one major change or the shift that has happened in the industry, that digitalization has gained its pace, and people are moving to smart factories now. The second, I think the whole concept of the employee engagement has got revisited, because and this I will take up with the third point that I want to make, which is about the whole leadership quality has changed. We are now looking at emotionally resilient leaders and people who have more compassion, calm, optimism, who can wade a large team through such a crisis. Because while a lot of the companies in many industries could shut down their operations or had the, let's say, the possibility of shutting down operations, you can't shut down something like a steel plant, because you were supplying oxygen to the whole country at that time. So was the cement industry. And that time, continuing operations amidst fear, continuing 3-shift operations, maintaining distance between employees, physical distance, where they would be earlier working at a kind of a feet or a 2 feet distance. I think that was the biggest challenge. And while we grappled with that situation, we realized that engagement and leadership is 2 things that can bring about a lot of change. So when leaders stepped up and they said, no, we have to run operations, and then we have to go into the plant, talk to people, allay their fears, and explain them how this is possible with physical distancing, not possible at places, and yet with proper sanitization and masks you can. So I remember those days when you used to sanitize every touch point. When a vehicle is coming from outside, and where the driver would hold the handle and where he would put his foot. And everything used to be sanitized in a sequence, in an SOP. So I think what came about is also a very balanced picture of our being able to adapt to change, which we were resistive to in earlier days, because it was not per force. The pandemic brought it per force. And I think, so again, just to summarize what I said, 3 things. One, that the digital has become a reality, and we are moving to smart factories now, real smart factories. Second is the whole concept of engagement has changed. And the third is that the leadership quality I see is a big change now. We are looking at emotionally as resilient leaders who can lead the way in such crisis.
Thanks, Pankaj. Very valid points there. Amidst all this change, the learning industry has grown exponentially. and has really helped everyone to upskill and, get into the shoes of the new requirements in the workplace today. So Raghav, what have been the key developments you've seen in the last 2 years?
Hi, Pooja, and hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So I'd like to echo a lot of what I think the previous speakers have shared as well, and maybe add a slightly wider perspective. By virtue of being at Coursera, we work with about 3,000 companies. And while a lot of the previous speakers have shared what we've seen over the last 2 years, which completely echoes with me, I'm going to take a little bit of a leap and try and forecast a little bit of what might happen in the next 1 or 2 years as well. So we are seeing three broad things, I would say, right? Obviously, all of us have worked from home where we could have in the last 2 years. And like Pankaj said, that's not doable in cement and in steel and so on and so forth, right? But we're seeing many companies are saying that even after the pandemic, we will continue to have remote work happen. We will continue to have virtual teams, right? And there are studies out there which are saying 40% of workforce might continue to stay remote. This may be lesser in a physically intensive industry like steel and cement. It may be a lot more in a company like mine, where we are an online company. And pre-pandemic, I used to have colleagues in 3 cities in India, and now we have colleagues in 25 cities, right? So we are permanently going to be hybrid. We are permanently going to be remote. And managing a virtual team, the reason I bring it up is it has its own challenges in terms of leadership and skills related to that. So that is, I think, possibly one thing that we are seeing. Second thing, and I think we heard this earlier as well, that almost every company has accelerated the level of technology investments that they've made, whether they are a technology business or whether they are a physical business, possibly beverages, possibly EPC and cement and so on. I think the challenge that companies have seen is you've implemented an HR analytics platform, you've implemented a data visualization platform, but you've not fully seen the ROI of these platforms because people are not fully able to use these platforms. And so there's a element of having bought the technology, but not having been able to fully deploy that technology to deliver what that technology can do for you. And I think the third element, which to my mind is a little bit of a paradox, I think everybody agrees that digitalization has accelerated, but the paradox is that with digitalization accelerating, we actually need more human skills amongst all of us, right? So while business is becoming more technology-led and digital, and this is a little bit in the context of our discussion today around redefining leadership for the new normal, that while our work is becoming more digital, we actually seem to need more human skills, and maybe that's something that we should talk about as we go forward as well. But that's something that we're seeing, I would say, across many businesses that at least I engage with.
Very interesting, Raghav, and you've set the right tone for us to now start thinking more futuristic. And now we are here at present, and what is the future going to look like? And while the mundane manual jobs can be taken care by automation, humans will be there to do more creative work, more innovative work, and use those kind of skills. To that point, Kavita and Dr. Jayakumar, I'd like to ask you, what is the topmost people management priority for you today, and how do you see that evolve in the next couple of years? We'll start with Dr. Jayakumar and then move to Kavita.
As I said, in EPC, time is the essence of the contract. We are supposed to complete the project with the stringent deadlines, with quality, safety, etc., as per the client requirement. So now with the pandemic, one has fear of anxiety, how to coming to the site, executing this. At the other hand, there's a rise in competition, multinational coming in, there's a scarcity of talent. So the first and foremost priority is today is developing leadership talent. When I say people, leadership talent, people who can handle major projects within timeline with skills like people management, leadership qualities, financial thing, etc. So what we do is we strongly believe in developing our own talent. We identify younger talent at mid levels in the organization, differentiate based on that performance and potential. We put them through a very, very structured, fast-track development process where they can groom as a project directors. This needs certain competencies like we look at what are the competencies required today, like learning agility and digital mindset, strategic orientation, customer partnership, drive, dealing with change, including social. We always relook at the competencies. So this is for the EPC. Then we are also into certain new age businesses like edutech, L&T Sufin, data center business, as well as green energy, such new age businesses. There we require talent with a totally different orientation with technological skills. As Raghav said, a new set of skills which is required. So we try to attract this talent by our EVP, that is employee value proposition, such as pride in doing a project which is of national cause, projecting our, not projecting, we actually moved, we have disrupted the EPC industry with the adoption of AI, ML, IoT, digital supply chain, etc. So creating an image of technology-based organization, new age business organization, more emphasis on learning and development and new tools and techniques. We fully moved into a blended learning approach, which we can discuss and talk about the autonomy and the freedom to experiment in our organization. So we focus on that EVP to attract. That is the next focus area. Third, leverage, since we are attracting a different type of set, leverage the social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We have an employee page. We have an employee review portals. We are fully into Glassdoor, Ambition Box, Indeed, etc. So different areas we are looking into. To specifically answer your question, how do you see it is evolving the next couple of years? Priority is leadership talent, succession planning, competency building, engagement and retention, employee well-being will be the priority. That is sustainable development, including DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. These will be the differentiators.
Very well said, very well summed, Dr. Jayakumar. Kavita, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I can just build upon that. You will see the traditional organizations foraying into the digital space and starting new age businesses. There's a huge, plethora of new companies and startups, taking shape, and you keep reading about the latest unicorn every day in the news. And the third aspect is, given the drastic shift in the way workplaces are now functioning, I feel that technology is no longer a luxury, and information availability is such a basic factor that all organizations are competing to provide information and supplying data to the colleagues and future employees. So I feel that when there is too much data available, too much information available, huge shift in the way teams want to be managed and would like to work and contribute in the organization. I think the imperative for the organizations and management teams is to see how can we help our teams and leaders create a culture where they're able to create a new playbook, a new toolbox for how they manage through this barrage of information that is available. How do we help our team members to see what is relevant for them? Because there is so much choice available today. After COVID, markets have opened up. There's so much choice available. Are teams really making the right choices? I mean, imagine fast forward 5 years and you see people who've changed 3 jobs in 5 years, which will mean that there is something that they wouldn't have looked at while considering, and people are happy to try, fail, retry, and move on. I mean, people are not judged for that virtue anymore today. So I would say having the right focus on all companies have their strategies. We also have one, but the strategy will hold good only if you have the right teams to take you forward, if you have the right culture to execute the strategy, and you have the right mindset in the organization to actually align with the strategy. So for me, apart from using the tools, it is very, very important that how do leaders create that playbook for themselves to navigate their talent in the organization. And I feel that succession planning will be one of the biggest challenges. And I think learning and development would be a huge tool for organizations to, really augment the way they can engage their employees across locations, is what I feel.
Interesting, Kavita. And I totally agree that leaders want to recreate a playbook to navigate the teams and the workforce in the organization in this new normal. And, really there are different styles and approaches to leadership. And a leader must, adapt based on organizational culture, business, location, and various other factors. To that point, Pankaj, I'd like to ask you, how do we redefine leadership in the ever-changing realities of future of work? Based on whatever challenges you have faced in recent times, how would you like to define leadership today?
We've been reading about a lot of things on how leaders get created over a period of time with, coaching, mentoring, and, on-the-job learning. A lot of papers in the past used to talk about the blend of IQ and EQ and how, EQ starts playing a larger role. I think the pandemic has, moved into a third phase where we are seeing that possibly EQ has a larger preponderance than the IQ itself. Possibly, pandemic, to my mind, there are 3-4 things that have kind of come to the fore, which as we grapple through the pandemic, some of the leaders who were better in the situation came about, and then we kind of characterized what was common between them, and we realized that most of them are about rounded personalities. The other side, which is EQ, being emotionally resilient. So that was the first thing. The second is that as this whole thing happened, and then we had the pace of change becoming larger, and conventional leaders not able to really handle the pace of change, or let's say very, very successful conventional leaders not able to sail through. We realized that those leaders who provided greater psychological safety to the teams, the freedom to fail, or the greater transparency, at the same time creating a sense of urgency and letting the two coexist. Whenever you create urgency in a state of crisis, what happens is everybody gets ruffled, and then there's a leader who can create an equal amount of psychological safety and balance the two together. So I think that attribute also kind of came about very, very poignantly. Third thing, I think, as some of my panelists were talking about, I never saw work from home, because there was not a single day when it was work from home, because everything was on site. But as the other sectors or industries grappled with the working from home challenges, somewhere the meritocracy has again come to the fore. Somewhere diversity and inclusion, I think, is now going to become a way of life, because end of the day, who meets the KPIs targets and in what effective manner is going to be is going to precede over everything else. So I think somewhere the whole culture is kind of becoming equitable and meritocratic. That's something as a third point. And also so I feel somewhere that the industry 5.0 will be about people and leadership, and not the next stage of 4.0, which progressively, if you look at industry 1.0 to 2 to 3 to 4, they have progressively moved. They have been the better versions of the earlier one, with a lot of things getting added. But 5.0 will be back to people and leadership, where people and leadership will become the most important part of the business, and not the quality of assets or not the quality of processes that you make. So I think these are my points on the kind of the way the leadership has redefined itself in the pandemic.
Very interesting, Pankaj. And I've really never heard anybody mention 5.0. So, this is one of my first, being part of this. And I'm so excited to even think about 5.0. So really, it's like future's coming very fast. Kavita, your thoughts on leadership styles?
Yeah, I think, with the change in the way, I think we are seeing a huge shift in the expectations of colleagues. And I think we have to respond to those change in the expectations of colleague on how they want to be managed. And I think it is becoming imperative for the leaders. I mean, it was always important to have trust as a key pillar of leadership style. But I think building trust when you can't meet as often as you did, building trust through screens, maintaining your authenticity and genuineness when you connect with colleagues, and so that's one. How do you create a network where you are able to continue with your positive relationships across the organization? How do you demonstrate consistency in your results? Like Pankaj was talking, at the end of the day, there is a reason why organizations exist. So the result orientation, along with the shift in how leaders engage with the team. And I think when you work remotely, I think a lot of the traditional challenges that leaders faced of not being able to delegate, today they are no longer a choice. I mean, you have to do it. So there's a huge shift that a leader has to go through in the way they manage teams today. And I think that good judgment, good expertise, coupled with consistency of results, um, and positive relationships is what I would see that could equip the leaders in today's day and age, that that they are able to get over and move into this new era of how they manage their team members.
The pace of change is speeding up and the landscape of business is more fluid than ever. Pankaj rightly mentioned this, and he also talked about Industrial Revolution 5.0. A recent BCG. Yes.
I'm sorry, can I add one point? While Kavita was speaking, I realized there was something else that I could add. And, somewhere while we talk about the redefined leadership, I think the leaders of today are able to invoke a larger sense of purpose in the teams. I mean, the successful leaders, which was earlier just about meeting the KPI targets. Today, I think the sense of purpose has taken over just the passion for work, or let's say making the team passionate about what you're doing. I think people are able to see the individual sitting in front of you as a more wholesome individual rather than just just an employee who's carrying out your work, your piece of work. I think that's an added point.
Very, very interesting point. So a recent BCG survey of the world's largest companies shows that only 1 in 5 companies are focused on upskilling frontline leaders to better manage, inspire, and coach distributed teams. To that point, Raghav, I'd like to ask you, how should an organization look at building leaders at each level in the context of newer skills like managing virtual teams, leading digital workplaces effectively?
Sure, Pooja. So I think the underlying assumption in your question, right, is that leaders are not just the senior people in business, right? This is a fundamental belief that many companies have, including us at Coursera, right? That everybody is a leader in their personal role, in their personal capacity, not just the business leaders, right? As an individual contributor, I might be bringing in thought leadership, I might be bringing in passion to my work, and so on and so forth. So the way we think about this at Coursera is, look, you could take this and say there are broadly 3 buckets, right? If you're early in the organization, you're more focused on leading yourself, right? That's what you're currently focused on. As you grow in the organization, you might be responsible for leading a team. And then eventually, as you become a business leader, you might be responsible for leading an organization. And as you kind of alluded to a little bit, right? When you think about leading yourself, these are typically skills like emotional intelligence. These are skills like interpersonal skills. These are storytelling, and so on and so forth. And I think we've all seen in the pandemic that while leading organizations and leading teams was always important, in the pandemic, because many of us were sitting at home, leading yourself became very important, right? How do I manage all the stress around me? How do I, manage working from home while there are personal responsibilities, and so on and so forth. And I think the challenge around us is that, look, I mean, in my experience personally, I've, in the 22, 23 odd years that I've worked, I've undergone leadership training only when I became a senior person in the company, right? To be able to take leadership related training to somebody who's early in their career in a company can sometimes become hard for organizations, because the focus is, let's train our business leaders on leadership skills. So one of the things that we've been working on, and I think we're starting to see some good success, is can we take learning opportunity around the buckets of lead yourself, lead teams, and lead organizations to companies, right? And what we've done is we've launched this thing that we call the Leadership Academy, where one can actually come and say, look, I'm an individual contributor. This is my second year at work. I've been working remotely from home. I want to learn the skills around interpersonal relationships, right? Or I want to learn the skills around storytelling. It could also be, and this happens in almost every company, right? You have people who become managers for the first time, and how do you train people to be new managers? Now, it's a slightly fuzzy thing. It's much easier to say, look, a hard skill like Python programming, you can be very clear about what that is. But how do you define what a new manager needs to know? And one of the things that we've done as a part of this leadership academy, given that crores of people come and we have a lot of underlying data, is we've said, look, usually a new manager needs to have 6 skills as a new manager, right? These are team management, people management, change management, conflict management, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. And then can we put out content which very specifically helps build these skills, right? And then can we also actually measure how skill development is happening? If you took a piece of content on change management, can we measure the shift in your skill level in change management that happened? Or can we measure the shift in team management that happened? So we've actually created the ability to say, look, on a score of 1 to 10, when you started, you were at 2. And as you spend some time learning these particular 6 skills, were you able to build that skill to an 8 or a 9 or so on? And then similarly, we've said, look, you might be a business leader. Can you, manage managers? Can you manage a team which is responsible for design thinking? Can you manage a team that is responsible for change management? So, just taking essential skills, not only thinking about business leaders, but thinking about individuals, thinking about team managers, and then taking this slightly fuzzy skill of leadership and making that very tangible by saying, look, here are the 6 skills, the 5 skills that you should be thinking about, and actually making them almost measurable as well. It just simplifies the process. It makes it more scalable for companies, not just to focus on senior people, but also thousands of people in the company by making this available online as well.
Very interesting point, Raghav, and very nicely explained the leadership academy and the 6, core skills that you talk about. And I also like that every individual, every employee is a leader. So, you don't need to wait to reach the top and then start your leadership training. Dr. Jaykumar, I'd also like to, yes.
If I could just add one quick point to that, right, that every individual is is a leader, not just a business leader. The other thing that we've seen, right, is leadership skills are proactive skills, right? These are about proactive engagement with your teams. Reactive skills are super important, right? Your organization hit a crisis, and what do you do in that crisis? So reactive skills are very important, and especially in the pandemic, they were. But I think it's good to also possibly keep in mind that leadership skills are proactive skills, right? What are you doing for the next 6 months, for the next 3 years, and so on as well.
Dr. Jaykumar, your thoughts? How are you building leaders in L&T?
It's a big area. I'll try to summarize in a short manner. I fully agree with Raghav that leadership is not for the top. You have to start building continuously. And also resonate with Kavita and Pankaj, what they said, the importance of culture, right? As somebody rightly said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So we have a culture of caring, learning, and training as a culture of the L&T itself. In fact, many people say L&T is known for learning and training. Okay, L&T. So jokingly, somebody says we also give excellent food in the canteen. They say it is for lunch and tiffin also, but on a lighter vein. So learning and development is a continuous process in L&T. We always committed to grow, the principle of grow your own timber. Okay, leadership development is one of our strategic priority. Even at a 5-year plan of Lakshya, also we bring it into the picture. We have a 3 type of leadership development. We have business leadership, project leadership, and then technical leadership. Okay, and how we go about is first, again, in that there's a 3-pronged approach. One is clarify what are the set of competencies required for that position, for that role. We do a detailed analysis looking at internal, external factors, get it validated, and arrive at the competencies. Then we arrive at the development centers. Earlier we called it assessment centers. Then we moved into development centers. So it's a typical 2-day center, 1-day assessment, next day followed by a feedback with multiple instruments, multiple assessors, all the goods of an assessment center, making it a robust process. Then we move into a very, very structured process of individual development plan for each one of them who have gone through the process. We have different learning path. We have coaching, mentoring. We have a different education-based education. We have the hybrid model of virtual education with the different, as Raghav said, we have whether Coursera, HBR, or SkillsCorp, different training, digital learning models we have. We take those courses from there. Then we have reflection-based, whether it is coaching, mentoring, or a peer learning sessions. Then as there's an experience-based learning, that is project, action-based learning, etc. So it's a structured process we take them through. It is not at the senior, it is, we call it at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, just above the supervisory cadre onwards. Tier 1 is the first level managers, then the middle level managers, and top level managers. We have identified that. Then we have also a 7-step leadership development process. As the career progresses, they go through, first they go through an IM programs, then we have a LDP, we have a global leadership program, different steps of program. Now what has happened because of the change, we have integrated into from a classroom into a typical blended learning. We have integrated courses from Coursera, HBR, Skillsoft, etc. More and more focus on digital blended learning, or including, we are also moving into VILTS, that is virtual instructor-led training, which has become the order of the day. So we focus at every level and ensure that in different methodologies are used to and involve different stakeholders also, superior, their department heads, and all those.
Thank you, Jaykumar, for taking us through your comprehensive L&D programs. So all of you mentioned that for every leader to inspire the workforce to put their best foot forward, to bring their whole selves to work is a priority. Plus, keeping employees engaged is another priority. And this era of great resignation, all this have become like almost like a CEO's agenda. To that question, Kavita and Pankaj, I'd like to ask you is, how are leaders like you empowering the workforce and to make sustainable transformation a part of organizational culture?
Top of the mind, a couple of things. So to be specific, we thought about it, in the wake of pandemic, what were the kind of emergent or the formative skill sets that we would need going forward. And, I'll take a cue from there. So I think we have revisited the whole concept of job enrichment and job enlargement and job rotations, where we are attributing a higher pace of job enrichments, enlargements, or rotations to building agility in the workforce. So speed and agility. And we think that the ability to adapt to ever-changing needs that the pandemic has brought together in the entire leadership pipeline will also depend on our overall strategy of how well we rotate people in different challenging situations from one. So we created a 3-tier approach where we said that we called it a 70-20-10 model, where we said 70% of the rotations will happen intra-department, 20% will happen inter-departments, and then 10% will happen inter-functions. For example, a person from manufacturing going into HR, from HR, somebody from finance going into HR, or either way going to logistics. So people who were kind of the top of the crest performers. So this 70-20-10 we rolled out, it's been about 1 year here. And so that has brought about a great deal of agility in the workforce, where people are ready because their own jobs are changing every day. So if there is something that is, brought per force by the environment, they don't react to it in a panic mode. They say, okay, fine. This is just a preparatory thing that we are doing in a very conscious manner. As I think Raghav talked about preventive and reactive. I think leadership is about doing preventive things. And this is one thing that we have done. The other is that we are now moving our L&D efforts from catalog or menu driven leadership, L&D interventions to very need-based skill interventions and, competency improvement programs, where competency improvement programs are primarily focused on the IDP, the TNI coming out of the IDP, and not key. We have achievement orientation course or a collaboration course. So how many do you want to nominate? Earlier, it was kind of a fill up the box. So that's the second change. I think more importantly, we are trying to create a culture in Jindal Steel and Power from a steady state or psychologically safe mindset. When everything is in a steady state, you're psychologically safe, you feel happier. We're trying to create a mindset that even transient situations or ever-changing situations can be psychologically safe, and you can have a balanced approach where you feel psychologically safe even in a ever-changing environment. And somewhere, while the whole bench strength in the leadership pipeline starts grappling with a ever-changing situation, we intend to create a kind of agile, speedy, innovative, and a emotionally resilient workforce. So that's my take on it.
Kavita?
Yeah, I think the blended learning approach of the 70-20-10, I think, has helped a lot of organizations. But what also intrigues me is that millions of, in fact, billions of dollars are spent on learning platforms, content creation, and a lot is available. So I'll try to just supplement what Pankaj has said. That see, there is an ownership of one's learning. So as an organization, we are focusing a lot on making sure that the owner of individual learning is the individual oneself. The organization can create opportunities, platforms, and provide a lot of things, but the drive has to be from within. So that's the first one, owning one's learning and development. Second is, I know it will sound very counterintuitive, but if you read Brian Kaplan's book, The Case Against Education. So, despite so much being spent on education, you see that platforms are not being used well. A lot of effort and investment that goes into this content that is made available to people is it really being used? So, we are also looking at, are we learning the right things and are we learning at the right time? So, if you see, the concept of the forgetting curve, I mean, it came in the 1930s, but I think it is still relevant. Most of the 75-80% of what we learn, we forget in 6 days. So how do you make sure that what you learn is what you can apply to your business context? And how do you make sure that you create the spacing and phasing where you learn and you re-emphasize so that you retain information and apply it in your business context, at a regular interval. So what needs to change in this is learning what is just in time, providing micro courses that allow you to quickly learn and apply it in your business context so that you retain it. Because if 70% of the learning has to come from at the job, then you should learn and you should apply. So that is the other part that we are looking at, and making sure that when you apply it to your real work situations, you also then can use opportunities of quick feedback, instant feedback, repeating your understanding about the learnings that you've had, and recycling it. So you learn, you unlearn, learn, relearn, and make sure that the application of what you're learning is happening in the business context. Otherwise, we have so many courses available. You can choose something which, and I am absolutely for developing skills that do not overlap with your current context. And there is a great case for building alternative skills as well. But I'm just saying that when so much content is available, learning at the right time, learning the right things is very important. And I feel the just in time and offering micro courses has kind of helped us a lot in navigating this through.
Very interesting points, both from Pankaj and Kavita. Raghav, I'd like to ask you is that what would your advice be to leaders for, creating a learning plan for the next normal? And I'll just add a little bit more to this question. Are there any diagnostic tools that could help balance out the core skills like communication, writing, agility, and domain skills? Could be accounting, software development, data analytics, etc.
Yeah, and I think just to build on what Kavita shared as well, right? And I agree with some of it, and maybe I can double click with a slightly different perspective on some of it as well, right? Too much choice is available when it comes to learning. And for people, it's actually become a challenge because too much choice is available, right? There's so much which is out there. we found that actually 4-5 years ago, right, if you went out and made everything available to an individual and said, look, learn whatever you want to, you own your learning, it was overwhelming, right? It's this classic, you go into a supermarket and there are 26 types of toothpaste available, which one do you pick, right? What we found is that, and I say this because it's backed with data coming from some of what we're seeing across thousands of companies, is that what's really resonating well for employees today is if companies are coming in and saying, look, we will support your learning, but we will help you build skills to get ahead in your career, right? So companies are saying, and I like to use this example quite a few times. Many companies are saying, we don't need business analysts in as many numbers anymore. We need data analysts just because the world is becoming digital. There's so much data available and so on. So if a business analyst is told at a company, look, there's lots of opportunity to become a data analyst, why don't you learn the skills towards that? And if that person then says, look, I'm happy to become a data analyst, or I'd rather become, somebody else. After that, it's our job as leaders in organizations to simplify that learning as opposed to complicating it. And what we are finding very, very successfully is if Coursera or any other learning platform comes in and says, look, to become a data analyst, here are 4 courses where you learn. Here are 2 projects where you apply. So you don't get caught up in the forgetting curve, which I think is super important. And here is a measurement which doesn't focus on your usage metrics. So it doesn't worry about you spend 10 hours learning or you finish 3 courses, but actually measures your skill as a data analyst. So you say you started as an early stage and you became a proficient data analyst. Those programs are quite successful. That's where we are seeing people respond and say, look, my primary responsibility is to work. I'm also appreciative of the fact that we are in a world where lifelong learning is a skill that needs to be built. Like any other muscle, it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months of building it to really be able to build it, and then to actually simplify, right? And this academy that I was talking about, we've done it in many other areas as well, marketing and finance and so on and so forth. It's resonating well because too much choice is not really helping, I think, with driving usage, bringing these programs to life. And the other thing which I'll quickly mention is, and it's an obvious thing to do, but we've done it very recently, is before I start learning to be a data analyst, if I can take a diagnostic which tells me what my current level is, it gives me a little bit of a kick in the backside, if you will, to actually be more motivated to come and learn. So we're actually encouraging a lot of corporate learners to come in and take a diagnostic before they start learning. And we're finding that, the motivation that it provides you is a lot more than just a generic open learning kind of a program.
Add something here.
Yeah.
Can I do? Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So,
yes, please.
Very, very nice point. I think made by Kavita, and then Raghav supported that. While Kavita was talking about why there are so many programs and yet people don't take those programs. So my view on this was, we've also been kind of struggling with these. There's the 2 kind of learning, as I call them. One is the push learning and the other is the pull learning. Push is where the organization pushes you to learn something. Now your willingness may not be there because you may not see so much of value for yourself. You see that directionally it is right for you to take up that course, but you don't see an imminent or an immediate value coming into you. And pull learning is something that the employee wants to pull from the employer, saying that I want to take up this course because this is going to add value to me. Now, very nice point on the diagnostic. Now, if you just look at a cycle where you have a PMS cycle going on and then an IDP coming out, the development plan. Now the development plan throws a TNI, training need. And the TNI sends you to a very customized training exactly in sync with your competency improvement requirement. And then you take it up with willingness because it's written on your IDP is that this is what you require to be better, tomorrow or better every day. And then this reflects in your next cycle of PMS saying that you have actually improved on these skill sets or these competency parameters, or let's say the competencies. And, it becomes a virtuous cycle because you see, so it's kind of mutual value adding. The organization wants to send you for a training and you want to take up the training. So I don't know if this point, adds value to what Kavita said.
Very interesting points, both from Raghav and Pankaj. Kavita, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Yeah. I was, there are 2 things. One is that, I think as organizations, we're kind of with this cycle that Pankaj just explained, we want to look at credits. I would say, let us shift from credits to outcomes, rather than measuring things, what you've done, how do you how do you use those learnings to create a business impact and the outcomes? That was one. But going back to the point I wanted to make to Raghav, I was speaking to a founder of a learning platform, startup. They're really growing very fast, and I would say that at some stage, when so many platforms and learning opportunities are available through the online and digital platforms, it will be very important on seeing the transferability of skills and information. So how do parallel or siloed systems talk to or interact with each other? Because at the end of the day, and we were talking about having kind of a learning passport that actually moves from one place to the other. And how do you use technology to leverage that? How do you connect, industries and create cohorts where, the learning, is transferred from one organization to the other? And how do we then take it to the next level where people feel that the organization is making me good, and they're also making me available and making me understand what's available, and still I choose to stay. So that's one area which I feel needs to be explored, the transferability of skills that people are picking up. How do you train, how do you transition them to a higher level of usability, is, if I may put it that way?
I'm conscious we are at time, but just very quickly, because this was super interesting, right? A skills passport, I know it's not happening yet for us as working professionals, but just as FYI, right, the government of India is saying in higher education, there's something called the academic bank of credit, where you can go from campus to campus and carry your credits along. But we've been talking about a skills-based resume, and can we build that for people as opposed to just an experience-based resume, or a self-stated skills-based resume. But yeah, super interesting points. Thank you for sharing those.
To that, I'd also add, word of knowledge, because that is also a, very trending topic. And maybe next time we'll do a roundtable on that. Dr. Jayakumar, any closing point from you?
See, today, I'll keep it short. I know we are running out of time. Hybrid learning has become the order of the day. So a combination of physical and virtual learning is taking over today from the traditional classroom. During pandemic, it was fully virtual earlier. Now we have a combination of programs. Today, we have some of the amazing online digital platforms, very intuitive, with wonderful content, with amazing user experience, which brings courses from the world-class universities into your laptop. Not only that, it nudges the content as per your learning style, your learning preferences, your learning appetite. That's one area which corporates and we are trying to leverage the maximum. As Kavita said, the micro learning is also another area which is picking up. So learning on the go, which is adaptive, which is skill-based, continuous on the go, and bite-sized learning, which is fun, intuitive, with recognition, points, etc. That is the another area. So some of the new skills, if I have to touch very quickly, one is learning agility. I'll focus more today because of the current situation, which is immediately related to the growth mindset. Learning agility, digital mindset, problem solving, emotional intelligence, which is more of anxiety management, adaptability, etc. And not but last, the need the full focus on the core domain expertise. So these are the areas which we would like to focus. Thank you.
So with that, we come to an end of this session. Thank you, Kavita, Raghav, Pankaj, and Dr. Jayakumar for sharing all these insights with us. You really helped to kind of broaden our perspective with respect to leadership development, and really generously shared key trends in the business world and how leadership development is today viewed. Thank you, viewers. I hope you enjoyed this session and you're walking with great takeaways. A lot of ground was covered. The recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel for you to revisit and rewatch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.